and welcome to On the House, the podcast where we talk about movies, TV shows, and video games because, hey, whatever we want to talk about's on the house. I'm your host, Clancy, and joining me as always is Dave.
Hey.
And joining us once again, probably our favorite guest host that we've had on this show, the wonderfully talented Ann Campea.
I'm trying to top David's hey everyone. It's nice to be back. Awesome to be chatting with David and Clancy again, and looking forward to chatting about what the movie we're talking about today.
Folks, sorry, go ahead.
I mean, she's been on now more times than one of the people we were originally considering one of the main hosts now.
Hey, I just can't get enough.
Well, folks, hold on, let me restart that sentence. I got all jumbled up.
Mortal Kombat!
Dun, 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 dun.
There, I gave you an entry point.
There we go. All right, folks, for round one, we're talking about none other than the 2021 remake of Mortal Kombat. Yes, you're undoubtedly aware of this series, even if you've never played a video game in your life. This is one of the games that famously created the rating board, heard with its use for fatalities and tournament-style storyline. So, folks, before we get into the movie itself, let's just dive into everyone's backstory with the games. Dave, why don't you go first?
Well, my backstory with the games is that I basically have none. I always knew the series existed, and I played it maybe once or twice, and I know a few of the major characters who just became big pop culture things, but other than that, I was never really familiar with the story or lore of the franchise.
Okay. And Anne, how about you?
Big fan of Mortal Kombat. I have also cosplayed one of the Mortal Kombat characters, Katana, who we'll talk about when we talk about the details of the movie. But I was playing this video game when I was probably a young teen. I'm trying not to date myself or age myself right now. Just love kind of the ingenuity of the game. So I think at that time there were 3 competing fighting games, right? Maybe Clancy, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. You had Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, and Tekken. And so all those 3 presented various different styles of how to play and how to fight. But I think of all of them, Mortal Kombat was the most impressive. And to me, through the years, has evolved through time in terms of just the amount of gore and blood and really super cool moves that you can do to essentially create fatalities across different characters. So I think that this game of all of the fighting games that were out during that period of time has been my favorite.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you there. I'd say of the 3 series, while Street Fighter 2 was definitely the best technically sound game, and Tekken had the 3D graphics, which were just mind-blowing at the time. You look at them now and it looks like a couple Lego characters fighting each other, but at the time they were really impressive. Mortal Kombat just had the fun factor on top of being a very solid fighting game. And as Anne alluded, there were the fatalities, man, because there's nothing better than not only beating your buddy in an arcade, but then reaching into his chest and ripping his heart out and showing it to him while it stops beating right before he passes away. That's how you show who won the fight.
And then you also win the video game, too.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I grew up in kind of a rough part of the country, so what can I say? But, yes, as I stated earlier, these games just absolutely took off to the point where in the 90s, there were actually not 1, but 2 live-action films. And, the first live-action film is, I'd argue, a cult classic. It's definitely great for what it is, but there was one big complaint that everybody always had about it. And I'm just going to say it, PG-13. So when this came around and it was going to have a hard R rating, we all knew we were going to be in for something maybe not better, but definitely closer to what the fans have always wanted to see and probably never thought we would actually see on screen. A big budget, live action Mortal Kombat. Does it really hold up? Well, that's what we're about to talk about.
Did you both see that movie from many, many ages ago?
Yeah, I've actually seen the 90s one a whole bunch of times. Actually, a fun fact, my dad used to babysit the actress who played Sonya Blade in it.
Yep, nice.
So, or sorry, I think it was my grandma used to babysit her and my dad knew her, however that worked out at the time. But so that's just a little personal history that I have with the movie. But for me, that's definitely it's as good of a Mortal Kombat movie as we could have gotten at the time, in my opinion. Especially when you consider how video game movies were at the time. I mean, just the year prior, you had the Super Mario Brothers movie, which some people don't even want us to talk about.
I actually kind of like the Street Fighter movie, though.
I'll be honest, I've never seen that thing in its full glory.
I agree with you, though, Clancy. I think it stood up to kind of what we could have expected from video game movies, and even to this day, to be honest, of what we can expect from video game movies. I would say Mortal Kombat was among the top of it, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. The bar has not been raised that high since the 90s, let's be honest.
I kind of think that's where I was going, was like, when you don't have a high bar to measure up to, then it's pretty easy to be on the top of that list.
Yeah,
I mean, we're reaching an era where we might have a golden age where video game movies are consistently, okay.
That didn't make me want to claw my eyes out. That's watchable. I'll take it.
It's one of those things where with every video game movie that's announced, people just hope that it's just okay. You know, even mediocrity in the video game genre is good enough at this point. I think that there's a lot of emphasis and expectations placed when a video game movie is announced. And so I think, what is the next one? Is it Assassin's Creed or something like that?
I
Or
know Uncharted's coming out.
Uncharted. Okay, so I think as we get into these games where the storytelling is a much bigger part of the game, rather than Mortal Kombat, where the technicality of playing the game and the fatalities and the moves that you do are more so part of what the video game is, rather than these newer games that have come out where the story is like makes so much more of the value of what the video game is, right? So I think maybe there's a chance with some of these video games that are slated to come out in the next few years that we get a little bit more story rather than just kind of fan service to wanting to see what you saw in Mortal Kombat, for example. I think we'll dig in there when we get into the actual details of the movie, but maybe less fan service and more substance.
Yeah, speaking of fan service instead of substance, the 2021 movie.
I gotta say right off the bat that my big issue with the movie is how, even though I know they're all playing sequels and that, but even taking that into consideration, this only really ever felt like a feature-length prologue.
I was actually going to say that exact same thing. This reminded me of back when the comic book movies were just getting started. Marvel and DC would have like those 2-3 issue tie-in comics of what happened the week before the movie. Kind of prequels that they would give out for free. This very much felt like that because this is a film called Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat is the tournament where Earth and Outworld are fighting to see if they're going to be invaded or if they're going to remain safe. And there's one thing not in this movie: the Mortal Kombat tournament. So that raises the question. So since this is more of a setup, was that the right decision? Did it give us a chance to really meet the characters more, or is this more so a interesting idea? Probably should have gotten through another round of rewrites.
Yeah, probably you know what? If I were to challenge, I bet the script was maybe 5 pages long. I mean, when you talk about rewrite, I don't know that they're rewriting anything because, and I really was trying hard not to start out with the negatives, but I think I'm going to blame David. He went right in for his first negative. So I'm going to go with, where's the story? To your point,
Yeah.
Clancy, where's the Mortal Kombat? Where's the tournament? There was none of that. It was really, they really tried to stitch it together with a character who ended up being insignificant to everything else that was going on.
You mean good old, hold on, let me Google his name again.
Is it Cole?
Yes,
Yeah.
Cole.
Cole, really, take Cole out of the story. You focus on Sub-Zero and his like journey and ongoing battle with Hans. I think it's Hansao. I'm sorry, I should have looked up the names before this.
Hanzo.
But you focus on those two characters, right? Because to me, that's the most intriguing thing. Is he's consistently trying to get rid of his bloodline, and we know nothing about the history of that. And they kind of talk about it, maybe one sentence here and one sentence there, and then that's it. And to me, if they just emphasize what's going on with those two, I think they could have really built a story around that and kind of a backstory to it. But yet they throw in this character who, obviously the intent was to tie together the past with the present. But to me, it just fell short. And that really, to me, is the crux of why the big negative for me is it's lacking any solid story to make me care about what should have been a tournament or something at the end, what we're talking about, which is missing from the obvious thing that's missing from the movie, which is the Mortal Kombat tournament.
Yeah, I'm just gonna use this for an example. There's a character who dies partway through this movie, and my reaction was, "Oh, I like that character in the game." It wasn't, "Oh, I like this character." It's, "Hey, I play as him as the game. He's one of my mains." That kind of sucks there. So I would say, because what's the big marketing for this movie, really? It's they're showing the Sub-Zero versus Scorpion. Sub-Zero versus Scorpion. I don't consider this a spoiler, but plug your ears for about 30 seconds if you think knowing something isn't in the movie is a spoiler. Scorpion's not in this movie for very long. I think he's in the opening 10 minutes, and then you don't see him again till the last 10 minutes after that. So it's focusing on who is his offspring, and like I said, the guy's name is Cole. Just why?
Exactly. The big question mark is why. He didn't end up being even a character in the video game.
No, he's made up for this. Like, I've kind of been thinking about this a little bit. It's like, what they could have done is, if they had made that character Liu Kang, although I guess that would have required to Americanize the Liu Kang character more than they probably wanted to. So let's scratch that and say they focused on Sonya Blade, and she was instead of being all in on this is Mortal Kombat, this is what it is. She stumbles across this. She's a cop, so she's trying to piece together what the heck is going on here, kind of doubting it, and then all of a sudden somebody's freezing arms off. That's your hook on, okay, this is what Mortal Kombat is, as opposed to, hi, Cole. These are the rules of the video game. Which, we really are shitting on this movie an awful lot here. I will say, the opening 7 minutes to this movie, I thought we were going to be in for a great time with the opening 7 minutes or so. I think they posted it online with the initial Scorpion Sub-Zero fight. because that opening 7 minutes, it sets the tone. It introduces the two main characters, or who should have been the two main characters. And you're just, after that scene, you're ready for, all right, let's go do this. And then it kind of screeches to a halt immediately afterwards.
If we want to get into some positives, I feel like none of the cast did an actually bad job. I was fine with the performances.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. No one did bad, but also no one did. Well, I'll take that back. I forget the actor's name. I think it's Joe Talisman, who played Bihan / Sub-Zero. He was a presence in this film. I'd describe him as every time Sub-Zero walks onto the screen, you almost have that Jason Voorhees, oh, this guy's going to wreck shit up kind of feel every time you see him. So I will say, I think with his character, they did a good job of not writing him per se, but making him feel like a threat.
Yeah, I totally agree with you both in terms of, the actors did what they could with the very horrible material that they had, is the way I would put it. Is that, when you get a shitty script, it's shit in and shit out, right? But the actors were trying to do what they could to really emphasize, what that character was supposed to be. I enjoyed all of the acting, I think. I think there was, obviously, I think what I've been reading is like many people love Kano kind of as like the lead, which maybe was unexpected. But I think when you put, and maybe it is just the material he was given, but that character, Cole, when you put so much pressure on the fact that he needs to string this all together and make it make sense for people, that he either just wasn't given the appropriate dialogue for you to feel emotional connection with him, or maybe he also fell flat. I don't know. But all of that to say, like, my big positives are the fighting scenes. I loved all of them. I think they were all great. I think they were campy when they needed to. The Mortal Kombat, call outs of finish him or fatality, it's so cheesy, but I ate it up. So I think where they needed to do what they quote unquote fan service, I think they put it in the right moments of the movie.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. I mean, there were some basically shot for shot recreations of some fatalities in here, and it's like, those moments were awesome. Or, for example, when I played the games, the three characters I usually play as is either Sub-Zero, Katana, or Cabal. So when Cabal was on screen and I didn't know he was going to be in this movie, I had a little nerd out moment of, oh, there's Cabal, I can't wait for him to do the thing.
I mean, as the one who's not familiar with the franchise, like, for the characters they use, do you feel they got the looks down for the most part, or?
Looks, yes. I'd say with certain characters, obviously they're just there to be fan service, but I'm confused by how they're going to explain the fan service with them, with one in particular. I'll get into that in a minute, but I'd say looks-wise, they all looked pretty solid.
Yeah, are we going into kind of the characters' aesthetics? Or can we go into that?
I think we should.
I thought, to me, my favorites, and of course, agree to disagree, right? I think most of them look great. Again, and I hate to keep shitting on Cole, but Cole's outfit was like a Ruby's costume, rubber like Aquaman, fake Aquaman suits, but everybody else looked badass. Like, I loved how Melina looked. I love how Sub-Zero looked. I love how Scorpion looked at the end of it. Raiden, all of them. I thought they all looked great, except for the main character. So, unfortunately, he got outfitted with something that just looked really cheap to me, especially when he's standing next to the other characters who really look to the T, pretty close to how you would expect them to look based on the video game.
You know what he looked like to me? I didn't actually ever see this movie, but I remember the ads for it. Had Dave Bautista in it. It was called The Man with the Iron Fist.
Yep,
It looked like somebody took just the short part of what his character looked like in that movie and made like an Under Armour version of that, is how I would describe it.
Yeah. Honestly, I wish they didn't give him anything. I wish that they let that dude with no shirt on and just his black karate pants and maybe some weapons. Like, that would be much better than giving him this really cheap looking armor that only went across his chest. Mm-hmm. What happened if he got hit in the legs? Like, it just didn't make sense to me at all.
It's the typical fictional body armor argument of this armor makes no practical sense whatsoever. Which, that's another thing that kind of irked me about this, is this film felt like it kind of needed to explain how everyone got their powers and whatnot, and I don't know, for me, the whole tattoo that you unlock your ability and it gets passed on to whoever the victor is of a fight, we're in a film for Mortal Kombat. Our disbelief is already pretty well there. We're willing to accept that there's lizard people in this movie. You don't need to explain it with magical tattoo powers. Let's just not worry about it and move on to the actual stuff we're here for.
Which, to be fair, when they said that this is going to be an R-rated version, we're going to get all the gore, they deliver.
Oh, yes, they definitely do.
And if I may ask, to keep it cryptic because I don't want to give away the whole scene, was that whole, magic hat table saw thing, was that straight from the games, or...
Yeah, it's Kung Lao is maybe, if I'm not doing my main three characters, which like I said are Katana, Cabal, and Sub-Zero, Kung Lao is usually one of the ones that I'll play as, and that's a fatality that I love doing with him.
I mean, I was amused because that exact same kill, just with a different technology, happened in Freaky a few months ago.
I still need to watch that.
Oh, it's fun.
But speaking of the characters, I gotta admit, I'm kind of surprised by some of the characters that didn't show up in this film.
Well, from what I read after I saw this, I guess this was supposed to be based more on the first game specifically, but then I don't know who came where in the canon.
Well, that's kind of what's throwing me. Well,
I don't know. Is it though?
I
still feel
there's
like
no Johnny Cage, so it's kind of he's
kind of the main dude is missing.
I mean, he's the guy who in the video game when they were actually rotoscoping everything, he's the guy that kept putting in the different colored ninja outfits because they could only afford 2 actors.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of, it's unfortunate that they made that decision to exclude him only because it makes it just like in TV shows where they write as if they're going to have a second season and then they don't. It's like you can't write as if there's going to be a second movie if they haven't officially put the stamp on the second movie if the first one flops.
Exactly.
This is based, depending on how this goes at the box office, we'll see whether or not this effectively had the same ending as Power Rangers 2017. Because we'll just say it right. You go on.
I was going to say, I'll be honest, I've completely forgotten Power Rangers 2017, so you'll have to remind me how it ended.
Well, they basically set up one of the other Rangers in the show at the end,
Oh, right.
But here in this, they basically they're setting up Johnny Cage for the sequel, which I'm willing to bet that with the way that scene feels, I thought it was supposed to be a mid or post credits that they decided just to move to the end of the movie just so people wouldn't miss it.
I did the typical, after watching the movie, Google to make sure I didn't have to sit through the credit things. because, sorry, folks, I don't have time to read everybody's name. Sometimes I have to cheat. And I saw where the director said that basically they didn't want to do it just because people were expecting it. So I guess that was originally intended to just be the final scene.
It's just too bad. Too bad. I think maybe even, swap Cole out and put Cage in, and you have a very I don't care what the story is, you have a much better mix of characters, I think.
Mm-hmm. Because that's kind of the thing. It's kind of comes down to, if it's not broke, don't fix it situation. Where how many reboots have the video games gone through, and they always go back to the same core characters: Johnny Cage, Liu Kang, Sonya Blade, Raiden.
Yep.
So it's like, I'm all for introducing new characters and whatnot. I mean, that's how you get great characters like Katana and Melina and whatnot. But it's kind of, for this, it was like, he's just not interesting enough, and I don't care about his relationship with his sister, girl, cousin, whoever.
I mean, I remember reading there was like a lot of speculation in the lead up to this, that since the main character was like a new one, that people were speculating he would turn out to be somebody from the canon, like under a different name or something, and that isn't quite what happened.
Yeah.
I think that kind of brings me to a point of, again, we have a video game movie where high expectations, lots of potential, and it just fell flat. And I wish we were here, and 90% of the conversation was going to be positives about the film. But for me, the negatives of the film are definitely outweighing the positives, and it's just another one of those times where you wish that we had a video game movie that could really pave the way, set the standard for all the ones to come out, and I don't think we have that yet.
Yeah.
From a fighting perspective, yes, but from a story perspective, absolutely not.
Yeah, for me, it's, let's see, I watched this on Friday and we're recording on a Tuesday. I'll be honest, I fast forward through the movie earlier today just to kind of remind myself of what happened in the film, because it's very much, it's very much one of those films that it's going to leave your memory very quickly, as opposed to the 90s one where, like I said, I think it's a cult classic at this point. So it's definitely stuck around in people's memory. It's the reason that people consider it the go-to best video game movie ever. So if there is somehow a sequel, I would love would be if they could take like the story and the character beats of the 90s version and put it in a blender with the action and the fighting of this version, and then I think we would have an amazing Mortal Kombat film.
I agree, Clancy. Make it happen. Edit the two together. Spend the next 30 days and do nothing else but edit the two movies together and give us a better movie.
I'll have to explain to my wife why I lost my new job, but all right, I'll do it. So you can help me out at Kickstarter/GoFundMe/INeedMoneyPlease.com.
Hashtag release the Clancy cut.
I love it.
Hey, my name starts with a K. It's fitting.
Okay, maybe you made a joke about that.
Huh?
They made a joke about that in the movie, like, it's Mortal Kombat. Oh, come on, they spelled it wrong.
It was the 90s when everything was cool with a K.
Let me ask you guys, did you have a favorite character in the film? I think you kind of said earlier, Clancy, but is there one that really stood out to you?
Go ahead and go first, Dave.
For me, I liked. I'm trying to make sure I'm having the right ones. Liu Kang was the fire guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was my favorite just because I liked his fighting style and his actor did a really good job. And Kano was just so delightfully an asshole that I just was amused by him. Like literally every line of his, it had to reinforce how much this guy is an asshole.
Yeah, I will say Kano definitely was chewing the scenery for everything it was worth in this film. And then, like I said, Sub-Zero is my favorite character in the mythology, so I was already probably going to like him the best, but I thought that his character was probably handled the best because he just feels like a threat throughout the entire film. How about you, Anne?
Gosh, I should have probably had my answer ready before I asked the question.
That's
I
typically my move.
I I actually don't think we've called out this character yet, but Jax was pretty great to me. I think of anyone, he had a little bit more emotional storyline there. Not a lot, but enough, right? He was there in the beginning of the film. He kind of sacrificed himself in order to let Cole continue on the journey. And then you kind of find him later on in some sort of form of redemption, saved in some ways, even though his arms are now robotic. But he gets like really cool powers through, strength through the his new arms. So I would say Jax actually.
Yeah, I did really love what they did with Jackson. I thought that him and the actress who played Sonya Blade had some, maybe not amazing chemistry, but some decent chemistry at least.
Yeah, agreed.
And I'm not going to lie, since mentioning this film, I did a Google image of Men with the Iron Fist just to make sure that I was thinking of the right film. And part of me wants to watch it now. It's got a lot of actresses in it that I didn't realize were in it.
I want to say I liked that movie. Uh, I will have to kind of go back in the memory banks, but I did see that film. Maybe it wasn't horrible. Let's just say that.
Well, that's all I need in my movies. Not horrible is perfectly fine by me, but hey, since this one kind of didn't work out, let's all name at least one martial art film that we recommend the people check out that they may not have seen. I'll go ahead and go first. This is probably my favorite Jet Li film. It's called Unleashed. It's about his character was basically adopted by a mobster who basically treated and raised him like a dog, and it's got some of the best brutal action scenes that I've ever seen in a movie. Definitely go check it out. It's called Unleashed, or if you're in France, I think it's called Danny the Dog. Definitely worth checking out. And now my co-host scrambled as I dropped this little bomb on them. Because I do such nice things like that.
I'm looking through a list. I think please don't hate me for mispronouncing this, but is it Ip Man?
I think so.
Have you seen that series? There's 4 of them, I think. And they are amazing.
I've seen one of them. I don't know which one I saw. It was one of those it's on TV kind of situations. So, you're in at the 30-minute mark, so you're not entirely sure what you're watching, but you mean to go back to it.
Yeah, I highly recommend just watching at least the first one all the way through, and then you might end up watching all 4 of them.
All right, I'll definitely add it to my list.
Martial arts movies are another one where I feel I should have actually seen more than I have. Like, all the answers I would give are ones pretty much everyone's already seen, like the Kung Fu Panda movies, or if I can really, really, really stretch the definition, maybe The Crow.
The Crow's amazing. We'll allow it.
Yeah.
So there, we ended up recommending, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 movies that you will probably have more fun with than this Mortal Kombat film. But if you're a diehard fan, I'd say you should probably still watch it, but you probably already have. But if you're not a fan or just kind of want to watch it to kind of see what this whole Mortal Kombat thing's about, I'd recommend sticking with the 90s one personally.
Or look out for Clancy's edit of both coming out in year 2025.
It'll be 4 hours long.
Yes, just remember www.gofundme/Kickstarter/I need money/ please I don't want to have to work anymore. Well, that being said, let's get everyone's final thoughts real quick. Dave, what did you think?
It was an all right movie. I mean, I don't regret seeing it. The action and gore was great. The performances were fine, and I mean, as an entry point for getting into this franchise, it's not the worst thing you could do. So, if you want to see it, check it out.
And Anne, how about you?
Yeah, I kind of actually, as much as I only said negatives on this podcast, and I apologize to those that are listening that were eager to hear positives, I would say it's still worth seeing. I saw it in a theater, simply because, I'm vaccinated and I felt comfortable and I missed the movie-going experience, and there's just something about it that typically makes action films look better because it's on a big screen. So there's something to say about if you feel comfortable and safe, see it in the theater. If not, I mean, it's right there on HBO Max, right? So very easy to just turn on HBO Max if you have it. It's less than 2 hours, I want to say, so it's not a really long film. So I think for the combat and fight scenes, it's definitely worth watching. If you're looking for more story and in-depth context and dialogue, then maybe you want to sit this one out. But overall, I would say if you've got time in your day and you've got HBO Max, or you want to just go to the theater and see something new because we've been in COVID for how long now and you're missing going out, yeah, feel free. Go see it. It'll definitely be it'll give you at least a good time.
Yeah, and I'd say maybe I've been a little too hard on this film, but you're the hardest on the things you love the most is what it really comes down to. And I love Mortal Kombat. Every single time there's a new game, I get it the day it comes out, and I spend all my time getting my butt kicked online because as much as I love these games, I'm not very good at them. But there's definitely some stuff to enjoy here, but overall, if you were to ask me if I recommend this or the 90s version, I still got to go with the 90s version, just end of the day. But folks, we'll leave it up to you. Tell us what you think down in the comments below, and as always, we want to thank Anne for joining us, and let the people know where they can find you.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me again. Happy to always hop on here as long as I've seen whatever it is you guys are talking about. So you guys can find me online. I'm on Instagram at Ann Campea, as well as at Ann Cosplays. On Twitter as well, Ann Campea. Find me online. Chat with me more about Mortal Kombat. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And Clancy, David, it was a pleasure again. Nice chatting with you about this film.
Always good to record.
Always good having you on the podcast. And Dave, thank you for joining us as always.
You'll never get rid of me.
I know, I've been trying. And folks, we'll see you next time.